Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's session of the NBA Warri branch webinar series 7.0. I am John ARUOTURE. I'm your moderator for today. I hope we all enjoyed yesterday's session. It was power-packed and highly value-based. Today also promises to be very interesting and exciting. The pedigree of our speakers for today gives us that confidence. I trust we all had our day going on very well. Our speakers for today are distinguished personalities. The first of them is Dr. Wisdom Enang. Welcome, Dr. Wisdom Enang.
Thank you very much.
And we also have Mr. Okezi Okah-Avae. He's an energy expert like Dr. Wisdom Enang. But just for clarity, Dr. Wisdom Enang is a mechanical engineer, while Okezi is a legal practitioner. We decided to have this blend today so we can have a more expansive deliberation, both on the technical side of the industry and the engineering side. Before we proceed, we would like to bring up the chairman of the branch, NBA Warri branch, Otadua Okwako, who has a few words of remark to give to participants and all of us. Thank you.
Right. Good afternoon, all. I welcome you to the day 2 of our webinar program. Yesterday was quite illuminative. Yesterday was quite illuminative and thought-provoking. And I guess two of us that came to the program enjoyed it throughout. But the knowledge that was dispensed and the opportunity given to many of us to look from our comfort zone to other areas that are much more beneficial. It's a promise that today much more also give us much more knowledge of areas of energy. It's very beneficial to our practice, for our everyday life. It said that yesterday, that knowledge is power. We remain in one place, knowledge is responsibility. So, please, plenty with our questions ready. Lecturers who are already choosing for the exercise. Because they are part of the competition. Because they are quite the daring aspect of it. And the legal professional, the legal aspect. So it's a blend, it's a mix. Knowledge is going to be beneficial. They call us learned men. We're not learned men for anything. Also learned men, many areas, many things. And the world is growing, knowledge is growing. So beg all of us to please be attentive. Let's listen to what the offer is. Let's analyze all this in that way. Everybody gets that's welcome all of us. Stage. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for that words of advice, that remark. At this point, I would like to state that again, just like yesterday, we are going to have 20 minutes each for each speaker. And thereafter, we'll have the question and answer session, the Q&A, where questions will be allowed. So while the conversation is going on, participants can send in their questions on the chat box. So we have an hybrid chat questions, written questions, as well as oral questions. So we'll begin today's session with Dr. Wisdom Enang. And before he takes center stage, I would like to say a few words about his bio. Dr. Wisdom Enang is an engineer, a mechanical engineer, like I earlier mentioned. He's a doctor of engineering from the very prestigious engineering university called University of Bath in the UK. He's everywhere. He has been involved, he's currently an energy consultant and a senior analyst to a number of international energy companies and energy media outlets. Currently serves as an adjunct professor of energy engineering from the University of North Dakota, USA. Prior to this, Dr. Enang oversaw the operations and maintenance of 24 shallow water, oil, and gas assets in Nigeria. And he is also had the oversight of 20 oil and gas execution projects between 2015 and 2020 in Nigeria. He's loaded. And the reason we decided to bring a mechanical engineer to this is for us to have some basic technical knowledge of how the energy industry works. It is not enough to know the legal parts. We also need to have some knowledge about how the clients we intend to have in the energy sector, how they operate. So Dr. Enang is here to give us that basic technical knowledge, as well as give us insights as to how lawyers can have the opportunities that are available for lawyers in the energy sector, having been experienced and having played in this space for so much of the time. Thank you, Dr. Wisdom Enang. We now call upon you to pause all the information and the value you have brought to us. Thank you very much.
Hi, thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Thank you.
Yes, we can.
Thank you. My sincere appreciation to the MBA Warri branch for giving me this opportunity, even though I'm an engineer, and it's a real privilege. I think in line with what the moderator said, I'd like to give a brief overview of how the energy industry works and what is changing and how the lawyers can also be a part of this change. So when we're looking at energy, we're looking at the trilemma, but some people like to say the A quadrilemma of energy: availability, accessibility, affordability, and acceptability. So availability has got to talk about, do we have the resources and have we brought them out of the ground? Do we have resources that we've translated from potentials, which is why the word potential features a lot in the Nigerian energy hemisphere. And you want to take that word from potentials to whatever, something that you're already taking advantage of, or from potential resources to exploited resources. And so that's what availability talks about. In that space, more generally, lawyers are looking at what is the regulations and the projects, and how do we enable the projects from a legal standpoint that will be able to explore and exploit those resources. That's just in a broad sense. I'm going to go into some real specifics. And then when we talk about the accessibility of energy, lawyers are also looking at, okay, we have availability of resources being exploited, and accessibility is that, okay, do we have a framework that allows the distribution of that energy so that it is equitable and people can access it? That in that value chain, lawyers have an opportunity. In the acceptability of energy, you also need an advocacy or someone that can advocate and help sensitize more from a quantitative standpoint, how well you're meeting your ESG goals. And so when you're talking about ESG goals, you are talking about, meeting it and also reporting same. You do need lawyers who do understand the legal framework surrounding ESG, both nationally, and by ESG, I mean, the environmental, the social, and the governance factors that are surrounding a certain project or the exploitation of energy resources. And then the affordability component as well. We're also looking at how do we ensure that the exploitation of that energy is affordable? And the first place you start to ensure affordability of energy resources is by de-risking your projects, making sure that you're not, expending excessively for your project execution. Because if you spend excessively for your project execution, you will need to claim, make sure that the pricing of that energy is equivalent to give you the return on that investment. And so lawyers are there to say, look, this is a legal risk and could potentially manifest or crystallize in form of fines. It's a legal risk that at the end of the day will cost you a lot of money to resolve, or may even create that project, create a counter effect, effective, results on the project outcome, and you may not even have any money from that project. So in a broad overview, when we're talking about renewable energy specifically, we're talking about the energy resource itself, but there are peculiarities to that energy resource. It's not as cheap as people say. There is a lot of cost on the CapEx side of things, capital expenditures, and there is a lower cost on the OpEx side of things, which is the operational cost side of things. And so to even make the project bankable, lawyers must identify the risk. So that's in a broad sense. But we're going to go into specifics right now and then talk about all the opportunities that lawyers can take advantage of as we explore or exploit energy. Now, the first place that lawyers can work when it comes to renewable energy is the regulatory and policy advocacy place. Now, this is really important. So let me put it this way. Investors will look at your policy framework to see the policy framework of the country, to see if there are certain frameworks that gives them protection. That means that those fiscal incentives that have been written up by the economic managers are fiscal incentives that they can literally take to the bank. And let me just draw insights. The success of the NLNG project today is because there is some sort of legislation that sort of protects that project. So you can give physical framework, but if there is no sort of regulatory provisions around those initiatives, there's some sort of volatility then, because the investors are worried that, look, should they come into that space, they might risk having a change in whatever incentives have been given to them with different regimes in the future. Let's say their project return on investment is going to take the next 15 years for them to get into profitability. They'll be worried to say, look, if that's the case, how sure are we that we are going to be safe in managing that risk from a policy and regulatory standpoint? And that's where the lawyers play that role. Now, even when we talk about creating that seamless relationship with the government, the lawyers play in that particular space as well. And of course, with the growth of ideas about carbon trading and offset schemes, there's a huge funding out there, and there's conversations around carbon pricing, emissions trading, and the compliance with carbon regulatory frameworks. Lawyers need to be able to tell the companies, look, based on your stewardship, these are the incentives that the government are providing, or these are the incentives from global funders that can come into that space and fund your projects. I think the rhetoric now is not just enough for you to show stewardship on your ESG goals as well as your net zero goals. It is also important for you to report it and also to do so competitively so that you can get access to those incentives that are available right now. Now, as we talk about energy transition, we're talking about measures and acquisitions. We're also talking about people, companies transforming from one form to the other, total petroleum becoming total energies and all of that. Lawyers are going to be very important in that space because when we talk about measures, we're talking about creating a common ground for the operating philosophy. We're talking about dealing with legacy problems like debt when those measures come up. We're also talking about making sure that the staff that are in the companies that are doing the measures are well protected. And of course, there are favorable terms for those that want to exit, as part of the measure, the measure event. So the lawyers are quite very important in that aspect. And of course, doing their due diligence as well to make sure that they look at assess the value and the risk of renewable projects, like I said, making sure that they're all in consideration. Now, there's something that we engineers do. We sort of think that everything is about technical risks. And so what we used to do in ExxonMobil back in the days is whenever we're about to we get to a decision phase, and we look at the fact that there are certain components of our decisions that are based on the existing regulations, whether it's environmental or regulations that has to do with some of our regulators. We always get a lawyer's agreement or buy-in, because we'll take it to our legal team, sit them down and tell them what the implications are, because whilst you may be thinking about the risk as being purely a technical risk that you should be worried about, you could get totally stopped in a project based on not meeting the legal requirements. I'll give you an example we can all relate to. How many times have you passed a property well developed, and then there's a red mark on the fence of that property saying stop work, and then they put a number? And it's very simple because perhaps the town planning office that was supposed to be met, discussed with, and some fees made for that project to proceed were not met. Not that the project is not technically okay, not that there's any contention at all about that land. It is the case that a lawyer could have been met and he could have said, this is a potential risk to your project. Go meet these guys and clear it off. As simple as that. When it gets to the law court, it would linger as long as possible. If you were going to monetize your project, then you may not have the opportunity to monetize your project quick enough like you would have thought of. Now, the next thing that lawyers play a very critical role is the aspect of contract for the project and the financing. I'll give you context. When I used to work on projects, it's a very different thing, and there are different tricks in the book. If you are running a lump sum project and if you're running a reimbursable project. And so when you're about to run your project, you sit with your legal team, tell them what you want to achieve, tell them the capabilities of the contractors, and we'll advise you and say, look, for this project, do a turnkey so that that guy doesn't come back and tell you that this and that are not part of the scope and that you have to pay more for it because it's reimbursable. And then the lawyers even know how to put very clever terms. For example, I was working on a project, and then I met a lawyer and said, look, put the phrase that it is a contractor's duty to meet the best of the industry quality standards for this project. And I thought it was just, why bother with all of that? But it came to help me, because when I asked the contractor to do a certain thing and he said no, it was not part of the scope. And immediately I referred him to that line saying, your execution of this project should be in line with the best standards of industry. And I told him, this is what the standards say. Even though I did not list it in the scope, you should also know what the standards say. That was where he changed from wanting to charge an extra amount of about $200,000 to doing it for free, simply because a lawyer looked at it and said, look, because of the project you're going to do and the nature of the risk that you want to talk about, can you put this simple phrase that whatever happens, you can tie whatever has not been done to the aspect of the industry standards. And so that saved me a lot of questions. But if we're talking about financing structure, to make sure that you do not expose yourself too much, to make sure that the right protective clauses are there, so that you do not, at the end of the day, get funding, but then your liabilities are beyond the company. They even enter into your own personal life. It is the lawyer that will look at you and tell you, no, this funding is going to be problematic, or yes, this funding has the right terms that protects both of you, in a fair manner. Now, the aspect of the energy and environmental litigation. So we're talking about disputes about energy projects. You know that, if you go to the Ogoni land, for example, there are a lot of contentious issues about, how the environment, things that are in the environment. In fact, let me even tell you how it affects. We even hear that rhetoric when we are talking about divestments. We hear them, some of those advocacy groups saying, no, this divestment shouldn't take place because of the the environmental impacts of certain operations that have done over the years. And also some of them, you find out that some companies, for example, ExxonMobil, in looking at the pricing of its sale to Seplat, did consider the fact that Seplat will ultimately go ahead and clean up those areas or instill the plug and abandon, requirements per the Nigerian regulations. We need lawyers to look at it and find out, is it fair? Are Seplat actually going to do it, or was it just for the sake of progressing the contract and at the end nobody's going to do it? Because there are legacy issues with divestments as it relates to plug and abandonment, simply because plug and abandonment is something that we considered more in the PIA. Before then, there was no real conversation around plug and abandonment and what the ecosystem should be done. And also, there was no conversation about setting funds aside to do that, like other clients that have set funds aside for plug and abandonment. Now, I've talked about the infrastructure development. The infrastructure development itself requires a lot of de-risking. Any legal risk is a financial risk, and any financial risk is a profitability risk. The next point I have is your stewardship of your corporate social responsibility goals and your environmental, social, and governance compliance. And in developing projects, you need to make sure that, again, when you are talking about how well you have met your commitments, it is not just enough to say we are meeting our commitments, we are committed to the environment. A lawyer is going to tell you how well are you meeting your commitments and to which standard? And then he would then wrap those, or he or she would then wrap those around the existing regulatory framework to say how you're doing it and what your stewardship are. And so communication in a way that is, quite succinct, in a way that is quite, it communicates strictly based on the merit of the point, will be put forward by a lawyer. And then, of course, I did talk about financing. Now, we should be aware that there are a number of funding opportunities that are available for developing energy, transition projects. Let's get an example. In 2020, BlackRock, which led about 60% of the key funders for energy projects, said that they will not be funding any project that has more than a 40% carbon footprint, meaning that those funds are being taken down to green projects. And so as you begin to navigate the ecosystem of green projects, you would need a lawyer to tell you exactly what is available, what paperwork is required. Because sometimes you're doing the project, but you haven't just kept your books in the way that the funders will appreciate it, so that you can get access to this huge amount of funds. And of course, how well do you show your stewardship in terms of the environmental goals, like I said? Of course, when a lawyer looks at things end to end for your project, it gives you what we call a sustainability of the project. He has looked from cradle to grave and said, what are the encumbrances? Now, I'm going to give you another context. I like to give people. When OPE came out initially, OPE even had their own rights. They invested $70 million dollars and bought a lot of bikes and did all right. And they were thriving based on the financials and economic aspect of their business model. One thing killed the business. Lagos State came out, cited a law, and said that they are basing that law to stop all motorcycles. And that was when OPE or own rights went out of business. One legal basis was used to sweep an entire economic basis for a project. So it is not enough to say, I have my economic basis sorted out. If your legal basis are not sorted out, then you have an exposure that could potentially undo the entire essence of the project. And so when we look at the sustainability aspects as well, we're looking at a lawyer helping you with sustainability audits. Then they will ensure that you are meeting stricter regulations around the environmental performance and energy consumption as well. Now, in environmental compliance, you will need lawyers to help you, particularly with your emissions levels, in stewardship of your emissions levels, waste management, and even resource utilization. And then as we go into my final point, which is on public-private partnerships, you know that the magnitude of projects for energy projects is simply things that you may not have all it takes financially, technically, and otherwise to do on your own. So you need people to come together. Lawyers can help you facilitate that partnership between the government, making sure I'm building on lessons learned to make sure that whatever mistakes that we've learned in energy project, both in the oil and gas, and they can advise you when you are dealing with Nigerian government, this is the peculiarity and this is how to navigate the terrain so that you don't get into the booby traps. Those are the jobs that lawyers are going to help you in negotiating terms, to make sure that you have the right terms and you don't have to go back and be in a disadvantaged position. For the legal framework for the infrastructure development project, the lawyers as well are going to help you to negotiate those terms, making sure that you have the right ambience for your PPP models, your public-private partnership project models, and then, of course, which is central for your financing and construction of the necessary infrastructure. And then, of course, the lawyers are going to help you just put your company in the point whereby you do not have legal exposures that will get you into a litigation standpoint. And should you get there, I think that the best folks for alternative dispute resolutions, which are very integral parts of contracts and projects in general in the energy sector. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Wisdom. I think I can just imagine now you skillfully intertwined the technical and the engineering and law, and all the lawyers listen with rapt attention, because you just highlighted the where they come in, the enormous opportunities there, and even of course say, we're having an engineer, what is he going to say to us that concerns the robots? All what you've just done now is so brilliant and on point. We are indeed very grateful. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So, so at this point, we'll go to our next speaker, and he is Mr. Okezi Okah-Avae. Okezi, are you there?
Good afternoon, everyone. Yes, I am. I've been listening with rapt attention at Dr. Wisdom. It's good to meet him once again. First time I met with him was physical. And we were panelists at an event last month or about 2 months ago.
Thank you.
That time I sat down and he spoke, and in the 20-25 minutes he spoke, I was more knowledgeable than I was at the beginning of his session. And today again, I have added more knowledge thanks to his immense knowledge and his willingness to share his knowledge with lawyers. As he said, he's not a lawyer, but he's always eager to share his knowledge with lawyers. Thank you so much, Doc. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Okay, so Okezi Okah-Avae is as practiced as a general legal and regulatory compliance advisor in the oil and gas and energy sectors for over 12 years. He works experience has also covered infrastructure, project financing, corporate restructuring, investment banking, private equity, mergers and acquisition. He secured his Bachelor of Law degree from University of Lagos and a master's degree from University of Aberdeen, United Kingdom. Okezi is the general counsel of Tetracore Group. Now, Tetracore is upstream, midstream, downstream, and they have about 11 companies under their portfolio in three nations of the world. He's the general counsel dealing with all their legal issues. In the industry, Okezi is known as the gas man, because all he knows about law is gas. And so he's here to work and to also let us know, basically, he's going to share his knowledge and views on the contracting process in the gas value chain. What documents do we need? What documents are required for all the gas deals? So we have you here, Okezi. Please, by your colleagues, share with us.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much. Good afternoon to everyone. My fellow lawyers. It's always a wonderful experience to be in the midst of your learned colleagues, especially when you are in an environment where you can learn and also share whatever knowledge you have. This is a wonderful session. I believe that this 2-day event would be extremely beneficial to lawyers, especially lawyers who are interested in being a part of the energy sector. A funny fact, if I may put it like that, is that I lived in Warri for about 2 years. I worked with Nigerian gas company. That's the former name. That's NNPC gas infrastructure company now, and also NNPC gas marketing company, formerly NGMC then. I worked with those companies from 2017 to 2019 ending. And then I moved back to Lagos at the beginning of 2020. So I have some kind of connection with Warri, and obviously I have some kind of connection with the NBA Warri branch. So for me, it's almost coming full circle. It's a good opportunity for me to give back to more or less my fellow lawyers. Funny enough, I'm also from Delta State, so I feel very, very much a part of the NBA Warri branch, even though I'm not a member in quotes. So as John has said, I identify as a gas man, a natural gas man. But then I would also indicate that I'm an energy lawyer, because as we understand, the entire energy value chain has to do with natural gas, has to do with power, more or less creating value from the natural resources that we have within the country. Sorry, just to confirm, am I very audible?
Yes, very.
Okay,
Can hear you
okay.
clearly.
Good. So I'll probably just start with an overview of our gas sector. We are very much aware of how much gas we have within the country. We are known as a gas province rather than a crude oil province. In fact, our crude oil reserves seem to be depleting gradually. And I believe that is why the government is extremely focused on shifting to gas, trying to tap and ensure we get value from natural gas. We have the decade of gas, which we are very much within. And the hope of the government, the hope of some private players within the sector is to be able to make sure that we take advantage of the resources that we have. We are number one. We have number one gas reserves in Africa, about 208 trillion SCOF. We are the number 8 largest reserves globally, and we export a lot of gas through LNG. We are the 6th largest exporter of LNG globally, and within Africa, we are number 3 gas producers in Africa. So definitely, we have a lot of gas. And it's also important to know that the gas that we have more of it is being exported than being used domestically. My company, Tetraco Energy Group, is one of those companies extremely focused on harnessing the gas reserves we have within the country, trying to monetize it, trying to capture it, understanding that gas is extremely important to the proper industrialization of the country, not just for power generation, but also for industrial use and other uses as well. So we understand the fact that gas utilization should be domesticated within the country. Efforts should be put in place in which we as a country, we are able to enjoy the natural gas reserves that we have within the country. But however, as we all know, you need money to develop this wonderful gas infrastructure. And how do we get the money? We have to more or less put the opportunities out there for financiers, lenders, funders, interested parties to come in and invest their money. And that is one of the key roles that a lawyer would have to play. As Doc has said earlier in his session, lawyers should begin to see themselves as industry experts. We are in this session with the intention of sharing the knowledge about how lawyers can take advantage of the opportunities within the sector. It is the very first thing in a lawyer's mind should be, he should tell himself or herself that I am a part of this industry. And because I feel I'm a part of this industry, I need to begin to think like an energy expert. Either I'm focused on power generation or I'm focused on natural gas utilization. You need to begin to put yourself in that shoe. I remember when I was starting as a very, very young and inexperienced gas man, or should I say a gas boy at that time. I didn't have much knowledge. I think one of the first things I told myself is that before I can get to that next level, I must develop myself. So I took a lot of time. I had to focus a lot on myself, reading articles, reading books, asking questions. I was lucky enough to have a mentor in the industry who handheld me all the way from the beginning to a point where I felt that, yes, I can stand on my own. And I will always shout his name wherever I am. His name is Dr. Teodele. I worked with him briefly in Bloomfield Law Practice. I was there for a couple of years before I moved to Warri to work with Nigerian gas company then. And he's a wonderful expert within the industry. So it's good to have a mentor, somebody you can touch base with, let him or her know that I have this interest in the field. How do I begin to develop myself? And then hopefully you have a mentor that would guide you the right way, and then you can begin to develop yourself from there. So the overview of Nigerian gas sector is we have gas. There's so much gas within the country. How do we utilize the gas? We do not have to focus on exporting our gas. The gas is within the country. We should be able to utilize it within the country. And we as lawyers need to realize the fact that there's a lot of roles we can play in ensuring all of this happens. I think the major role a lawyer should play in the gas industry is contract structuring, contract drafting, contract administration, contract management, and all of that. Some key contracts that you probably have in the gas sector. You have your gas sale and purchase agreements. You have your gas transportation agreements. You have your gas processing agreements. Those are agreements that work more or less within the midstream and downstream parts of the value chain. When you move a bit upstream, you're talking about probably your joint operating agreements, your production sharing agreements, farmer agreements that have to do with oil and gas fields, developing those fields, how parties come together, probably jointly develop these fields, and how do they then get some kind of value from the arrangement you've created. So for me, and I always tell myself that when a contract is before me, or when there's a request to prepare a contract before me, one of the first things you have to think about is you have to identify your stakeholders and what are their interests. Two parties are coming together to develop a contract. Obviously, each party will have his own interest or what they are looking for. You as a lawyer, you as a draftsman, you'll be able to feel the pulse of the parties and understand exactly what they are looking for in that arrangement. It's something that would guide you while you're drafting your contract properly. Then also basic contract management skills is very important. Your ability to draft a contract, your ability to put on paper what both parties are trying to achieve is a skill. It's not something that you learn in a day. It's a skill. But as they say, practice will always make perfect. Then also, while drafting your contract, it's good to also have at the back of your mind whatever regulatory compliance you should also have to be aware of while drafting contracts. Naturally, there are times when there'll be back and forth between the two parties trying to align on certain provisions in the contract. So all these are things that you have at the back of your mind while drafting a contract. I'll speak briefly on some of the key contracts that apply in the gas sector. We have the gas sale agreement, and we also have the gas sale and purchase agreement. So these are two completely different agreements, but extremely similar. So the major difference between a gas sale agreement and a gas sale and purchase agreement is that a gas sale agreement is what is utilized in the upstream. So when I say upstream, what I mean is there is a company that has gas reserves. Let me call them gas producers. And they are trying to sell gas to, let's say, a middleman who will take the gas and then more or less move it downstream. So what will be signed between the upstream gas producer and the middleman is a gas sale agreement. And then what the middleman will then sign with whichever entities at the downstream end, whichever entity actually needs the gas to use the gas, let's say a power plant or an industry, will then be signing a gas sale and purchase agreement. So those are the major differences between them. And then even within a gas sale agreement, you could either have a firm arrangement or an interruptible arrangement. So a firm arrangement basically says that each party is bound to ensure that they either deliver the gas or they offtake the gas. Come rain, come sun. As long as it will not affect their ability to do business, they are expected to take the gas. That's a firm arrangement. And then interruptible, as the name implies, is maybe due to one or two issues, you might not be able to take the gas, you might not be able to deliver the gas. So the agreement allows certain situations that each party might not perform their services or their obligations to offtake or deliver the gas. And then you have your gas transportation agreements, which has more or less been simplified under the gas network code, which was issued a couple of years ago. So what we have is we have your gas transporter, in this case, Nigerian, the NNPC Gas Infrastructure Company is the gas transporter. That is the company that owns all the major pipelines in the country. They call them trunk lines. They own all the major pipelines in the country. They will then sign a gas transportation agreement with, say, a tetraco like my company that wants to ship gas from point A to point B. So we then sign the contract with NGIC for whatever amount of years that we want to sign off on. And then you have your gas processing agreements. Gas processing agreements, as the name implies, it's a scenario where you are, let's say you own an upstream asset that is ready to produce gas. However, the wet gas coming out of the assets cannot be used. It has to be stripped down. There are so many impurities in the gas components that you have to strip it down. So typically what you do is that you have a processing plant that will take the gas, process it, strip it down, take some parts of the stripped down gas and turn them into other products which can be used, natural gas liquids, condensates, whatnot. So you then need to sign a gas processing agreement with the owner of a processing plant, who you will then give your gas to. They will strip the gas. They will then give you the dry, lean gas, which has been gotten after the whole processing has been done. And as I mentioned earlier, there are some agreements that apply to the upstream, production sharing contracts, farmer agreements. Those are contracts that we have at the back of our minds. But what I would say is, for a lawyer while drafting a contract, it's important, as I said, you understand who the stakeholders are, what are their interests, what are they looking out for, and you have the ability to, document all of this properly. Also, having at the back of your mind that whatever you do while drafting your contract, you must always protect the interest of your company. I always say while negotiating contracts that it makes no use if I'm negotiating a contract and all I'm interested in is my company having everything their way, the other company having nothing their way. It's a win-lose, which is not good in any way, because at the end of the day, when it's time to implement the contract, the other company or the other party who hasn't gotten things their way, who has more or less been forced to live with certain provisions, will struggle to perform their obligations. And if they struggle to perform their obligations, the contract is more or less useless. So it's always good to ensure that while you are negotiating a contract, you look after your company's interests naturally. You ensure that there are no liabilities attached to your company. You ensure that your company is protected completely, but also at the same time, you also ensure that the other party has the ability, is provided with the platform more or less to perform their own obligations, their own contractual obligations. So that those are key things to have at the back of your mind while drafting contracts within the gas value chain. Also, it's important while drafting a contract, it's important to have at the back of your mind what are the regulatory compliance issues that might affect the contract. You have your PIA, which more or less guides us on certain things that need to be done. You have your licenses that you as a lawyer should be able to advise your company, oh, this is the project you want to embark on. First and foremost, we need to come up with a risk management plan. And one of the risks that we can highlight is regulatory risk, legal risk. Part of the regulatory risk should be the licenses you need to get, your ability to secure those licenses. If there are issues that could come up tomorrow that will prevent the company from getting those licenses, could be bureaucracy, could be change in laws or what have you. So it's always good for a lawyer to have all these things at his fingertips while coming up with a contract, while advising his company on the right steps to take in arranging a transaction with other parties. So policies, we understand the industry policies, their regulations, that more or less, most of the regulations came out from the PIA, Petroleum Industry Acts. I know that currently the regulators are trying to streamline and ensure that all regulations have been passed properly, so that players within the industry can be properly guided on what to do and what not to do. So kudos to the government. I would say kudos to the government in trying to ensure that all regulations are put in place. I'm a member of an association, Downstream Gas Delivery Distribution Association, and we have engaged government several times on ensuring that we have regulations in place that also take the interest of the players within the industry into consideration while coming up with that. So we are thankful that most times we have town hall meetings, we have engagement with regulators to ensure that whatever regulations are pushing to us, we are fine with it. We try to ensure that these are regulations that will allow us run our business the way we feel like our business should be run. And I think another aspect a lawyer should have at the back of his mind when it comes to energy, although it's not as prominent as other aspects like contracting, is dispute resolution and arbitration. I've always been an advocate of arbitration. Major reason is it's fast, and also there's some level of performance of the contract that continues even during an arbitration process. So while you're drafting your contract, it's always good when it comes to dispute resolution mechanisms you are trying to adopt. It's always good to always adopt arbitration as your final dispute resolution mechanism. You can probably start up with mediation, maybe management of the parties will meet and try and mediate. If that doesn't happen, then you can then move things on to arbitration, try to see if that would help. Expert determination also helps as well. So expert determination more or less is a process whereby an expert within the industry is called upon to mediate if there's an issue between parties. So while you're drafting your dispute resolution provisions in contracts, it's always good to have an expert to mediate if need be. Then I will wrap up my session by speaking about emerging markets and innovations within the industry. one of them being a government's interest in moving to CNG and LNG. As we are aware, CNG is compressed natural gas, which is virtual pipeline. It's a way of moving gas from point A to point B, especially when there are no pipelines to utilize. LNG is the same thing. It's liquefying natural gas to be able to move gas through water, through roads to places where there are no pipeline presence at all. I think the major difference between CNG and LNG is the fact that with CNG, there's a limit to how far you can go in moving the gas molecules, but with LNG, there's almost no limits. Yeah, there's a limit, but it's much better than CNG for LNG. So right now we have a lot of new players coming up in the CNG space. A lot of parties are coming up. They are developing CNG assets, trying to utilize the government's interest in that part of the of energy. So I would say, all in all, opportunities for lawyers are massive. Doc had spoken about a lot of them. I've also highlighted some. So thank you very, very much for this opportunity.
Yeah, thank you, Gasman. We have indeed been filled with value. Sorry, I forgot to mention, this is recorded, and so we intend to upload on YouTube. So everybody has the right to know that for privacy reasons, we know it's a recorded session. Thank you, Mr. Okezi. Now, okay, participants, you can indicate if you want to ask questions. I know I've seen some questions on the chat box, but you can indicate by raising your hands on the toolbox there. So we will mute you and you ask. Before then, let's take some of the questions on the chat box. Doc.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I don't know if you can see some of the questions on the chat, on the Q&A box, webinar chat, okay, chat box. You see some of them here?
Yeah, I can see some of the questions here.
Okay, so Okezi too, I hope you see them too. So I don't know how we'll run through them. Should I read them, or you read them and answer, speak to the questions? Or should I go?
I think, John,
Okay.
you should read the questions, and then from the questions, hopefully we can determine who the question has been addressed to.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. So the first one from Daniel Udoindo. Why can numerous individuals push for the PPA? I think he meant, why can't numerous individuals push for the PPA? Why can't numerous individuals push for the PPA in renewable energy in Nigeria, considering the price of EMS? I guess, okay. I don't know what it meant by PPA.
PPA.
PPA, I don't know what it meant by that. So, Daniel, if you are here, you can raise up your hand, so we can allow you to unmute you, so you can unmute yourself, then ask a question, so you can have a proper understanding of what you want. Second question is from Udwak. Second question is from Udwak Jackson. Hello, sir. Kindly share templates of all these contracts mentioned. The third question, Shedrack Siketi, does the gas transportation agreement contemplate or put into consideration the host communities where the gas will be transferred / obtained from? Then Roots Imini Esquire, who owns renewable energy sources, that is wind, solar, and are they state controlled, privatized, or open to public development? So these are the questions we have before us. So I can juggle them between two of you and see how we can have the answers. Thank you.
Right. If I want to look at the ownership, I mean, my other colleague who is a lawyer can help, but I do think, and to the best of my knowledge, that the Nigerian federal government owns and controls the country's mineral resources, for which renewable energy is part of it. Now, the question is, as we begin to decentralize and the energy portfolio, which I know the Electricity Act of 2023 attempted to do that, I think the contention is not going to be about the ownership, but the contention is now going to be, okay, now that the government has allowed states to explore those resources, ownership is no longer the issue. It's now how well are they going to be harnessed, and what is going to be the framework for settling who is the operator. For example, if it's the states that is exploiting those resources, and how they're going to settle the federal government. But I think all energy resources are under the purview of the federal government. And sometimes it is very clear, I'll give you context. It is very clear how the modalities are, between those resources are being considered. For example, in the oil investments, it's clear what happens and what happens in terms of the formula and the sharing formula and the rights and privileges for each party. But for the gas, I think that's really where Nigeria is struggling, because I think for the gas terms, which is still holding back investments, it's not clear about the ownership of the molecule, nor is it clear about, and which is why investors are still waiting for that pronouncement, I believe. The lawyer will be in a better position to throw more light on that. But I think energy resources are generally owned by the federal government. That's my take on that question. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Okezi, which of the questions are you picking up?
Okay, there was a question about gas transportation, and I think it was because I mentioned gas transportation agreements. So there was a question. I don't know if you can help, because I'm trying to get a question. I don't know if you can help me read it out so I can respond.
Okay. Does the gas transportation is from Shedrack Siketi? It says, does the gas transportation agreement contemplate or put into consideration the host communities where the gas will be transferred / obtained from? So basically, host communities. Does the gas transport agreement make provision for them?
Okay, so for the gas transportation agreement, so let me just quickly explain how that works. NNPC Gas Infrastructure Company owns the major trunk lines, as I said initially. While laying those lines down, because they have ELPS, Escravos Lagos Pipelines system, they have the AKK that is coming up, and they have OB3 that, if I'm not wrong, should be operational, but to a certain extent. So these are all the pipelines that I've mentioned, as well as some other smaller lines that they have, apart from the major trunk lines. These are lines that would have been put before they can be laid down. The government would have gotten what is called a right of way, which is they would get all the approvals, all the consent they need from the government to be able to lay all the pipelines they need to lay right up from point A to point B where they want the pipeline should stop at. So whatever host communities appear along the way would have been compensated under the right of way, under securing the right of way, right? So they would have most likely been relocated. Some monies would have been paid to them to ensure that wherever they were before the pipeline came into being, they have been moved to a place where they are more or less in the same situation. So regarding that question, yes, host communities will be taken care of for NGIC to lay down the pipeline. Then apart from the NGIC owned pipeline, we have some other smaller pipelines owned by some other private companies, and also some owned by NNPC Gas Marketing Company, which is former NGMC. These are small lines, these are distribution lines, these are smaller lines, whereby they themselves would have to secure oil pipeline license, approval to lay the pipeline, approval to construct your pipeline. They would have made those applications and received the approvals, the necessary approvals to lay those pipelines as well. And also the right of way would also apply, which is if the land is going to traverse and maybe they might need to move certain host communities or certain people's properties for those pipelines to be laid properly, they would have secured that, compensation would have been paid, all of that would have been sorted out in order for these companies to lay their pipeline so that they can run their business. So I hope that answers the question.
I think it does. Again, as a follow-up, I think I will just also come in here on that. That's what the NGIC side. For the contractor side, from practical experience, after the NGIC deals with the communities, the host communities, and whatever sort them out financially, before the contractor even operates on that stretch, there's what you call there's this term, it just keeps me now. So the contractor deals with that. They also need to deal with that payment on the side. So you make provisions for the kind of give them slots from the communities to deal with.
So I
carry out some jobs. Yes.
Yeah. So just to add to what you're saying, so what happens sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes, is the host communities can come out and say, you want to lay this pipeline. It is a project that would, let's say, take 3 months. In process of laying the pipeline, you are going to need workers, you are going to need security, you are going to need people to carry out certain services for you. You need to ensure that you hire some of the local indigenes to carry out some of these, let's say, smaller roles. Yes, so a company can have that arrangement with a host community. All of that is part of stakeholder management. It's always good to, if you are going into a particular state, if you want to do a project, you want to do a transaction in particular states, it's always good to have a very good relationship with the indigenes of that state. You understand? You need to be seen as a friend of the state. You need to be seen as a friend of the state. So it's a good one to also have at the back of your mind. Yes.
Yeah, I think that is, sorry, the term just came to me, FTO, freedom to operate. That was what I was struggling. That was the term I was struggling with, where the contractors deal with the host communities. And if you sign an FTO agreement, freedom to operate. Thank you.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
Yes, freedom to operate. Thank you. We have more questions. Okay, good. Emmanuel Uti, how would a lawyer practicing in the Warri axis and has developed himself in the energy sector be able to have the means to have contact with these energy companies for him to practice what he has just learned? Okay, that's one question. Then again, something we missed out, Dr. Wisdom and Okezi, the issue of your presentation slides. We want to have picked them so we can share via emails to all the participants, registrants, and that's why we asked them to register so we could have access to their emails. So before
no problem. Yeah, that's fine.
Share with us.
I will do that. No problem.
Thank you. So are you taking? Okay, thank you. Yes. Are you taking this question from Mr. Emmanuel Uti? Yes.
Well, it's obvious that the question is directed at me. I mean, it's a lawyer-to-lawyer question. So the thing is this. I remember when I will always use myself as an example. I remember when I told myself that I want to be an energy lawyer. And the first thing I did was begin to read up on basically energy, oil and gas. This was years ago, long before even the gas master plan came into play. At that point in time, what we had in front of us, what our focus was, as private individuals, as a government, was crude, harnessing the crude oil reserves. Very few companies were doing gas. Very few companies were thinking that gas was the future. Very few companies I think at that point in time, maybe only Falcon and some other company were probably doing gas at that time. But for whatever reason, I had spoken to somebody and the person told me gas was the future then. So I began to read up on gas and I began to build my interest in gas. And as soon as I was done with that, I had to put myself out there and I had to market myself. Once you are done with developing yourself, and also remember that you can never be done with developing yourself. You probably develop yourself to a particular level and then realize that you need to move ahead. But before you then begin to further develop yourself, you would have to, as they say, practice makes perfect. You have to work on certain transactions just to boost your knowledge and make you more qualified as an energy expert. I believe that there are law firms in Nigeria, particularly in Lagos State, that have very, very vibrant energy departments. There are different names. They call them energy departments. They call them natural resources department, oil and gas departments, whatever names they call them. There are certain law firms out there who are always looking for good materials to hire. And I believe that you put yourself out there, you make yourself be seen and be heard. Opportunity for you to work with them will be high. And you also need to realize that sometimes it's luck comes into play. And I don't use the word luck, but I have to be very factual, and I try to be as factual as possible in my day-to-day dealings. Luck comes into play. And who knows, you might be lucky enough to get somebody who will recruit you and get you to a company. But while you're waiting for that big break, while you're waiting for that in-house within a company, maybe a legal department within a company to come on board for you, an easier get should be law firms that have energy departments and are looking at recruiting good hands to come on board and help them develop their energy businesses. So there are a lot of there are a lot of law firms out there that you can consider. A lot of them, I'm sure if you begin to write to them, you begin to reach out to them. If you reach out to 10, at least 3 would respond. And from there, the opportunity is yours. I hope I answered the question well. It's a tricky question though, but the bottom line is just put yourself out there. You gain nothing by not trying. You win nothing by not trying. You understand? So that's just it.
Yeah, and let me just add some points to what my colleague said. One of the ways that has worked for me, which is why I've gotten this far in the industry, there are 3 things. He talked about self-development. I'm going to give you my buzzword for self-development. You need to learn before you earn. So before you think about making a lot of money, you need to think about having a lot of skill set and value proposition. The second is you cannot survive such a complex industry without a mentor. A mentor is going to deploy the social capital that it takes to be able to take it from point A to point B without the path of least resistance. And you need to have contacts and collaborations. And that's where conferences, webinars like this come to play, because you meet people of like minds, you have some sort of thoughts about what opportunities are there, and then you begin to collaborate in those regards. Let me just answer one question that applied to me quickly. Someone asked that I talked about regulations and which of them apply. I'm going to quickly just run them down, a couple of them. Without any thought, any energy project that you want to do in Nigeria, you must have an environmental impact assessment. So there's an environmental impact assessment act that guards those projects. There's a national environmental regulations of 2014 as well that applies to the energy sector in general. There's the Climate Change Act of 2021 that also applies. There's a Renewable Energy Policy Guidelines of 2006. There's a National Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency Policy as well that applies in Nigeria. All of these are the policies that a lawyer will be able to superimpose your project intentions, your project execution strategy, and your intended project outcomes and the utility value of your project on these regulations to make sure that none of it are infringed. And at the end, you don't deploy capital and then you're not able to progress because you haven't kept in any of these regulations as part of your project execution. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. There's one question I'll take from Abdul Kadir Usman, who is a chief magistrate from Bauchi State. He says, "Good afternoon. I'm very grateful for this webinar as, okay, not a question though, as I am currently undergoing a PhD on the examination of the essentials of an environmental management plan in the Petroleum Industry Act 2021. Okay, so I think that's a comment and not a question. There's a question from Nath Akbos from Port Harcourt, so I'm trying to track it. What's it? Sorry. Okay, the question is from Nath Akbos. From your experience, how have you been able to manage, I think this question is for Mr. Okezi also. From your experience, how have you been able to manage breach of terms in contract with multinationals vis-a-vis different laws that are applicable? And now have you managed forums for such arbitration where necessary? Nat Akbos, Port Harcourt.
Yeah, so let me just confirm the question he asked. He wants to...
No, he wants to know. Let me go over it again. He says, from your experience,
Okay,
how have you been able to manage breach of terms in contracts with multinationals vis-a-vis different laws that are applicable? And now have you managed forums for such arbitration when necessary?
okay. So every once in a while, you have to sign a contract with a company from a different national. So typically what applies is we first and foremost try to push the Nigerian law. You try to make sure the agreement is governed by the Nigerian law, especially when the subject of the contract. So let's say you're bringing in a foreign EPC to come in and develop an asset for you, and the work is supposed to be done in Nigeria. So typically, you will push that Nigerian law should govern the whole transaction, the whole contract, because the project most likely is going to be done in Nigeria. You are developing an asset that will be used in Nigeria. So typically, Nigerian law should apply for obvious reasons. There are times when contractor will say, no, he wants his own law. We've signed, my company developed a CNG plant. It's 6 million scoop of gas per day CNG plant in Ogun State. And we used a Chinese contractor. They are the ones that carried out the EPC works for that particular project. And the contract that was sent to us had China stated as governing law. And we pushed back and said, no, we want Nigeria. And they came back and said they are going to fabricate the whole plants in China and ship to Nigeria. So it should be China. And we said, no, the plant is supposed to be used in Nigeria. So it has to be Nigeria. So we had that more or less roadblock. They wanted China, we wanted Nigeria. So I thought about it and I said, typically when this happens, it's always best you pick a neutral jurisdiction to govern your contracts. Typically, for me, I will always move to English laws. Why? Our laws are extremely similar to English laws. And we're able to sign off on English laws being the governing law. And obviously in your contracts, you would have, because the contract that we ended up signing, we had to make sure that certain Nigerian laws were taken into consideration all through the document and all through the transaction, and also certain Chinese laws should also be taken into consideration as well, because we will always be held accountable to Nigerian laws. They will always be held accountable to Chinese laws. So we yes, we had English law as the governing law, but then certain regulatory standards under the Nigerian law were taken up, and then for Chinese laws as well were taken up. And then, as I mentioned earlier, you have your dispute resolution provisions. Most likely in a scenario like this, the other parties will not want this resolution. They won't want the Arbitration and Mediation Acts. They won't want anything to do with Nigeria. They will most likely want somewhere neutral. And thankfully, the arbitration regulations are kind of universal. So you can always call upon any arbitration law that relates to Nigeria, relates to our business more or less, and adopt that in your contract. But then you also have to realize the fact that your venue of arbitration will most likely not be Nigeria. It most likely will be in another country, maybe the UK, maybe America, maybe another country. So you're advising your company to also know that in the event or in the unlikely event that there's a dispute, you should also ensure that the country makes provisions to travel out of the country to handle that aspect of whatever issues exist. But typically, you have the cost, the awarded cost in your arbitration. Whichever party is awarded is more or less gets decision when there's a dispute, should ensure that the other party who more or less loses the arbitration should be responsible for all the costs associated with the arbitration, travel costs, engaging lawyers, and also obviously payment of the arbitrator as well. Yeah, so those are things that you have to consider.
Thank you very much, Okezi. There's one other question. I think I'm taking it because it's slightly different from the host of others that we mentioned. It says from Augustine Azike, what opportunities are available to lawyers in the taxation of the energy sector? I don't know if you can take that. Okay. Did you get that?
Yes, I did. Yes. So typically, right, what a lawyer needs to do is realization that the taxation for energy in Nigeria is quite special, right? So a lawyer can easily make himself create a niche within that area of law. Taxation, there are tax lawyers everywhere. There are certain companies like KPMG, PwC that have legal departments, and all these companies they are more or less tax auditors, more or less, if I may put it like that. So they have vibrant legal departments. They have legal departments that have energy experts there. So there are so many opportunities for a lawyer who has decided to focus on taxation in the energy sector in such companies like that. That's one. Then also, energy companies, oil and gas companies have legal departments. They have finance personnel who handle their taxes. But trust me, a lawyer coming in with that experience would be an added bonus for that lawyer. it makes it more marketable. And trust me, a lot of energy companies will be extremely interested in hiring a lawyer who not only understands, knows his stuff as an energy lawyer, but also understands taxation. So the opportunities within that space are enormous. Trust me. It's if it's what you are focused on, then I would say you're on the right path.
Thank you. I believe that participant has gotten the hints, and if he hasn't started working on taxation, he should at this point. Because like you said, it becomes highly marketable. There's a question from Shedrack Siketi. It is the importance of a mentor was stressed by Mr. Okezi. How can young lawyers get access to mentors in the energy sector? Okay, putting into consideration that very few lawyers are in this sector. Have you treated this before? Okezi?
Sorry, I lost you. I lost you a bit. Please can you repeat yourself?
Oh, sorry,
I
there's
lost
a
you a bit.
question.
Okay.
Okay, there's a question. I don't know if you've treated it, so I'll read down, know if it's something you've handled before.
Okay.
The importance of a mentor was stressed by Mr. Okezi. How can young lawyers get access to mentors in the energy sector, putting into consideration that very few lawyers are in this sector?
Oh, well, first and foremost, when you say very few lawyers, I struggle to agree with you that there are very few lawyers in the sector. The number is not as much as, let's say, litigation and maybe some other areas of law, but I won't say with a few lawyers. It's the numbers of lawyers in the energy sector grow by the day. On this call, we have attendees who in their hearts are energy lawyers, and hopefully in the next couple of months will be full-fledged energy lawyers, right? And that's an addition of energy lawyers into the massive pool already. So we have a lot of energy lawyers practicing today. Law firms, they're in law firms, they're in companies, they're in governments, all practicing. I would latch on to what Doc has mentioned. Doc spoke about attending conferences, attending webinars, putting yourself out there. A lot of mentors will not go looking for you. You are the one that has to go looking for them, right? A lot of mentors or a lot of people who could mentor, let me put it like that. A lot of people who could mentor are very busy. And you would have to show them that you actually need their guidance or whatever else you need from them. So I would say attend as many conferences as you can attend. A lot of very wonderful mentor figures attend these conferences, speak there. You can reach out to them. You could send them maybe messages. You check your LinkedIn, you see a lot of them. You could send them messages on LinkedIn. Just more or less introduce yourself and tell them exactly what you're trying to achieve. I believe that a lot of people will listen to you. I would listen to, send me a message on LinkedIn. I receive a lot of messages on LinkedIn from young lawyers trying to pick my brain and whatnot on certain things, and I'm always available. Most of the lawyers I know make themselves available for young lawyers because we know that once upon a time we were in your shoes. We didn't know anything then. We were extremely green. We can only thank God that we've gotten to where we are today. And the next thing for us to do is to see how many people we can then bring up and ensure that they themselves can do the same for other young lawyers coming up. So basically attend conferences, read up as much as you can read up online. There are a lot of articles, there are a lot of documents online that you can get your hands on, and invest in knowledge. I remember when I was 2 years, 1 year, 2 years at the bar, I had to begin to purchase books. I bought books that I began to read, and from there, I began to feed my desire for knowledge within the energy space. So you have to invest in yourself, invest in your knowledge more or less. Thank you.
The other thing that I would have loved to add is, one would ask, wow, I became so much of a feature within the lawyers' environment, especially lawyers in energy. And it all started by joining a group on WhatsApp. So rather than joining an irrelevant social media group, I joined the Lawyers in Energy forum, and opportunities came up. There were a number of settings like these that where we had to cross-pollinate ideas across lawyers and non-lawyers. And I indicated interest to speak at that forum. They saw the value I brought to the table. I was featured a couple more times, and I was able to exchange, contacts with a lot of people who thought we could collaborate on a number of fronts. So the joining such WhatsApp groups, and I keep telling people, even in engineering, in oil and gas, in governance, there are key WhatsApp groups where there are very key decision makers. They may not even talk, but when they see how much value you're bringing to the table, it might be a basis for conversations that will take you to the next step. So make sure that you engage yourself positively, even on social media. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Wisdom. The chairman of the branch, Tado, I think he has a question or a remark. So let's hear him speak.
Appreciate this groundswell of information that we have received. Question is related to Warri and to my members. There's no way we have for program in my television, and I will not participate. So I appreciate this. Both of you, I want both of you to answer the question. What are the opportunities out there that are open and available to lawyers to take the core decision areas for it? What was lawyer in Warri to break in the energy sector? Let this program be beneficial to my members. Can you assist us in the question? Both of you.
Okay, so let me I smile because I
See your face.
you
We're
can't
not seeing you smiling. We can't see you smiling, so I want to see you smiling.
Okay, can you see me now? I'm smiling.
Yeah, I can see you smiling.
So I smile because I always see myself as a realist, and I will always try to encourage as much as I can encourage. I mentioned earlier that luck comes into play, and it might seem as if, how does luck come into play? A lot of times luck comes into play. And I will use myself as an example. So I mentioned Dr. Ayodele, who is my mentor, and I know him through somebody. And there was a day I was doing jobs. I was trying to get another job. I was working in a law firm. I didn't really like the experience, so I was looking at how I could move to another law firm. And then I walked into a place and I met a friend. And he said, "Oh, that he's going somewhere, I should follow him." And I had a lot of things to do that day. I'm like, "Look, I'm busy." He said, "No, let's just go there. Let's go hang out somewhere." I said, "Okay." So we go somewhere, we're having drinks. A friend stops by to greet him. I said, "Oh, he's going down to meet some people." And from there, discussion started and all of that. And I always say that it's luck. You understand me? They say be at the right place at the right time. All those things play a role into it. However, while you're waiting to meet the right person, or while you're waiting for the right time to come, you should also develop yourself. That self-development development is key. It's absolutely key. Is emerging. They call it the emerging market in Nigeria. I think I think the future is now. They say energy, natural gas is the future. It's not the future to me, it's the present. It was emerging a couple of years ago. As soon as the government realized that as soon as the government declared year of gas in 2020, and then they realized that they had made a mistake. Gas doesn't need 1 year. Gas needs at least a decade. And then from 2021 to 2030, they had declared decade of gas. As soon as the government's focus moved to gas, that was the time when gas became the present, right? And at that point in time, there is a need for any lawyer who is interested in being an energy lawyer to develop himself or herself immediately. There are webinars, there are conferences, there are articles, there are people that you can talk to. Use all those opportunities to develop yourself. You talk about opportunities for lawyers within Warri. NNPC Gas Marketing Company has its headquarters in Warri. NNPC Gas Infrastructure Company has its headquarters in Warri. As I said, I lived in Warri for 2 years and I worked there for 2 years. And we have a legal department, or they have a legal department with lawyers there, opportunities there. And I know that it's NNPC, it might not be so easy to enter NNPC. However, still try. You don't know if you don't try. Still try. Apart from that, there are companies operating within Warri who are into natural gas, are into energy, and are looking at recruiting lawyers. Because you need to realize that some of these companies, there are guys who have set up these companies and need proper guidance on how to run their businesses. Running their business also includes having a lawyer or having an active law firm within their system that can properly guide the management on decision making and certain things that need to be done. You putting yourself out there, you're letting them know that I'm a lawyer, this is my field, this is what I do, I am good at what I do, recruit me. Trust me, a lot of these companies will jump at you. But you need to put yourself out there. You need to build your knowledge. You need to be confident in your knowledge, right? You are a lawyer. You speak with authority, right? When you go somewhere and you say, I'm a lawyer, and you begin to talk, a lot of people will sit up and listen to you. So you need to go there, speak with authority, let them know that you bring value to the table. And because you bring value to the table, they should take notice of you. And trust me, they will do that. A lot of companies are coming up, they're trying to tap into the decade of gas, they're trying to tap into the opportunities that exist currently within the gas, natural gas space, within the energy space. And they are looking for lawyers to come on board, help them with their drafts. Oh, we need to draft a contract. Who do we turn to? It's lawyers that will turn to. It's lawyers that will advise them on how best to draft a contract. It's lawyers that will advise on what kind of contracts to draft. It's lawyers that will be in the best position to put the proper provisions in the contract that will protect them and protect their interests. So once you begin to develop yourself and take yourself to the next level, trust me, opportunities will begin to fall from the sky for you to take advantage of. Thank you.
Thank you, Okezi. Dr. Wisdom, would like you to share your opinion on this. What's your take on this, sir?
You said it all. I think a bit of preparation, a bit of luck, a bit of putting out your value out there. I mean, I did this when it came to even, I'll give you one context. When I wanted to put out some value that I bring to the table, I write some editorials every day on different issues, give my perspective. So sometimes people may not give you a platform to show what's different between you and the next lawyer. But participating in conferences, picking up very topical issues, discussing them, and showing the depth of clarity you have on those issues is a way to sell yourself. And of course, networking across board. So he said it, I do agree with what he said. And as I said, my practical example was, having an in-depth understanding of certain issues. I met a couple of newspapers and a couple of energy magazines. Value Chain is one of them. Major Major waves is another one. I also, for African, I think African Oil and Gas Report or something is one of them. And there's another one in Ghana. So over time, have developed these partnership where I write on the various economic topical issues and put it there. And I can see a lawyer do the same thing. That's one of the ways people read about you and say, oh, I like the perspective is tackling these issues on, maybe in the energy law framework, not your normal day issues. That's one way to sell yourself so that you can distinguish yourself from being a professional, just a professional lawyer, to having enormous value to offer.
Thank you very, very much. We've taken a whole lot of questions and we're really engaged. A lot of value has been passed to all the participants, and it has been a very exciting session for us. And when we now include what we enjoyed yesterday, I believe that we're about a very successful webinar. Thank you, Dr. Wisdom, for taking our time. Immediately I saw you at the energy retreat in Ikoyi. I said, please, I need you to come and speak to us in Warri. And there was no hesitation from you. You just gave me your email and told me to send the invite. And same too for the gas man. I know I asked you a question when you were making your presentation. I used that so that you could notice me. So when I go and when I ask you to come to Warri, so it will be easy. So it will be relatable.
Yeah, in fact, I was actually hoping that this would have been a physical session, because as soon as you mentioned it to me that NBA Warri branch was having this, I was excited. I was like, okay, I'm going back to Warri, because I haven't been to Warri in a while. Last time I was in Warri was sometime early this year. Early this year. Funny enough, I got married in Warri. I did my traditional in Warri. So my connection to Warri is deep. I lived in Warri 2 years. I got married in Warri. My connection to Warri is quite deep. It's quite deep. So I was hoping, and I have family that lives around there. I was hoping that it would have been a physical one, but nevertheless, I believe it has been a very, very, very good interactive session for myself, and I believe also for Doc as well. And to my fellow lawyers out there, I am very, 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 very much available for everyone. Whoever wants to reach out to me via LinkedIn, I'll drop my name. My name is Okezi Okah-Avae. It's the name you find on my LinkedIn page. Drop me a message. Anything you want to share with me, I'm very, very much available. I take pride in seeing lawyers today who become energy lawyers tomorrow. There's a lot of pride in that, because I always remember how it was for me at the beginning and how I had that support getting to where I am today. So thank you very much.
Are you there? We can't hear you.
I'm here.
It's okay.
Still here. Yeah.
Okay, good. I want to add, Dr. Wisdom, immediately I asked you, I overheard you speaking to the organizer of that retreat. Oh, John is taking me to Warri. I've never been to Warri before. So I realized that when I told you it was a webinar, I saw your face. You had that, I thought it was going to be a physical event. But nonetheless, I believe you remember that you really wanted to come to Warri physically. Yes.
I remember.
Yes. Nonetheless, we're going to organize a law week, which is going to be a physical event, and certainly we will invite you. Certainly, we invite you.
Thank you.
Yes, and we have our traditional food. We'll make everything prepared for you. You enjoy yourself in Warri. It's a nice town.
Thank you very much. Deeply appreciate. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. And to the participants, I believe we all enjoyed ourselves yesterday, today, and we have learned a lot. We have built capacity to some extent. And like the speaker said, we should do more. And there's a little bit of luck there, but luck is actually opportunity meeting preparation, or preparation meeting opportunity. We need to be prepared. We need to build capacity. And like Mr. George Etomi said yesterday, join the section on business law. There are committees on energy. Join, you will get more information, participate in the committee events. Like he said too, you may not know it at the beginning. There's no shame in not knowing. Where the shame is you don't know and you claim you know, or you don't know and you don't want to know. If you don't know, there are a lot of persons who are ready to help you, who are ready to lead you by the hand and teach you. Like Dr. Wisdom has said, it started from somewhere. Okezi said, and I remember Okezi mentioned that the last retreats we met, said at the beginning, when he saw the GSPA, the gas sales and purchase agreements, he read it for over a month without understanding anything about it. Now he's an expert in it. And that's how we all start, please. And it's something we can all do. Mr. George Etomi yesterday said he's 70 years old now. 10 years ago was when he got into power. Now he's an expert. So even at 60, as at that time, he didn't feel he was too old to learn. He didn't feel the younger persons who were teaching him were too young to even teach him. He listened to them, he read, he built capacity, and now he can go around the world teaching about on gas, speaking on gas, consulting on gas, on power and on energy, basically. So we all have a lot of opportunities. The energy sector has arrived. The opportunities are enormous. We should spare time from whatever it is that is taking our time now and allocate some time to building capacity in the energy sector. It's a very rich sector. It's a sector that is denominated in USD, and so there's a lot of money, a lot of cash flow in it for lawyers. So I urge all of us to take time out and really build capacity. Thank you, Dr. Wisdom. Thank you, Okezi. Thank you, participants. We have had a very good time. We'll endeavor to send we're able to send the presentation slides to the email addresses provided. I do hope that, of course, we're going to organize more webinars. We're going to make more invitations. Our Law Week event is coming up, and so we'll put all the information out there, give you more time to prepare, and time to be part of us. Thank you for tuning in to NBA Warri. We are the foremost branch in the country. In fact, a lot of persons don't know we were formed in 1959, and when the NBA, in fact, we're the pioneer founders of the national NBA itself. So we have been there from the beginning, and we are still here and will be here to the end. Thank you very much, and God bless.
Thank you.